Professor Gary Nolan is one of those precocious minds that when you meet them, you know you're in the presence of awesome, incredible intelligence. He's a Stanford University-based professor of immunology. At the moment, he's a nominee for the Nobel Prize. He's one of the most reputable immunologists on the planet, extremely well regarded. He's got multiple patents, huge numbers of papers that have been published in his name. He's got 2 companies listed on the NASDAQ because of successful inventions that he's made. He's just all round a complete total overachiever. And one of the things that I loved in meeting him was his candor. The fact that he was so prepared. He's very fast becoming one of the public faces of UFO, UAP commentary. He's decided to take a very public profile because he's actually an experiencer himself. So when I asked him about the significance of the US government's admissions that have been made about UAPs in the last 12 months, I was quite shocked and surprised at what he told me. Professor, how significant is it that the United States government came out a year ago and admitted that unidentified aerial phenomena are real? Whatever they are, they're a real mystery.
I think it tells us that, first of all, the government has been lying to us for the last 60 or 70 years. I think it gives solace to people who have been told that they were crazy to have been believing or seeing this. So that, to me at least, from the personal point of view, from the human point of view, that's one of the most important things.
I know this is speculative, but why do you think the US government's lied?
I think it's because, frankly, they didn't understand what it was, and nobody wanted to admit that, first of all. But second, they didn't want to admit that they didn't have control over our airspace. We didn't have control over our own airspace.
So the government's been lying, but do you think there's been a cover-up?
Absolutely. I mean, there has been both a cover-up as well as a disinformation campaign to make people look like they were crazy.
See, this is amazing to me, to hear a scientist of your reputation saying this. I mean, you're one of the most eminent immunologists on the planet. You're a Nobel Prize nominee. You're somebody highly respected in your area of medicine. Is it a dangerous thing for you to admit that you think these things about the phenomenon?
I think it's dangerously necessary. I think that this is the kind of thing that if we continue to ignore it, if we continue to ignore the potential danger of what it might represent, we are putting ourselves at risk, both to what it might do to us in sometime in the future, but then ignoring the physics of what these things are capable of doing.
Let's talk about it. Mm-hmm. What is it?
You know, I wish I knew, and of all the people that I've spoken with on the inside, there's really very little unanimity about what it is, except for that whatever it is appears to be so far advanced from us that it beggars understanding.
So you don't think it's human?
Oh, I'm sure it's not human.
Is it intelligent?
Yes. It certainly acts it, and in some cases it seems to have a sense of humor.
So Gary, the implications of what you're saying there are enormous, aren't they? Mm-hmm. You're suggesting that there is a highly advanced civilization that is intelligent, mm-hmm. It's not human, mm-hmm. and it's real.
Yeah, I almost hesitate even to call it a civilization. A civilization implies a lot of interacting parts that are moving towards some sort of goal. I couldn't even say whether or not what it is that is being observed is something like that.
Wow. That's been pondered for all of human existence. Are we alone in the universe? Congress seems to think not. A bill recently approved by the Senate committee in charge of overseeing the U.S. intelligence community would change the definition of a UFO to, among other things, explicitly exclude man-made objects. And that means there are non-man-made objects out there. So what does the government know, and will we ever know the whole truth to the question of if life exists outside of this Earth? To find out more, let's bring in Avi Loeb, a professor and astrophysicist. He's also the founding director of Harvard's Black Hole Initiative and the director of the Institute for Theory and Computation at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. That's a very long title that makes you smarter than me. Thanks for joining us, sir.
Thanks for having me. You could have saved time by calling me Farm Boy. That's where I grew up.
Farm Boy, Avi Loeb is joining us now. What are the implications of this new definition of UFO, recently approved by the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence? It specifically excludes man-made objects from that definition, so there must be non-man-made objects.
Right. Human-made objects are a matter of national security. We want to know what our adversaries possess. But if there is an object behaving differently or well above our technological capabilities, and it doesn't look natural, then it's a matter of science. It probably doesn't adhere to national borders. And it's about time for scientists to clear up the fog. The government must have data that it hadn't released, which is of much higher quality than the blurry images we are looking at right now. And so the question is, what is this data showing? And it would be a little bit inappropriate for us to wait for the government to declassify the data because it involves classified sensors. And so the best path forward is to look at the sky because the sky is not classified and scientists can follow this task.
Yeah, you can't just be like, well, maybe there's some non-man-made objects out there and then leave it at that. This revised definition of the UFO, it also includes something called transmedium objects. What is a transmedium object? Why would lawmakers include that in this new language?
Well, that's very interesting because in the past it was all about objects moving in the air, but now they're talking about objects going into the ocean, in between the air and the water and coming back again. And so it means that there is some data that we don't have access to, which indicates that. Otherwise, they wouldn't put this language. I'm leading the Galileo project, which is funded by private donations, and we are conducting an observational search in the sky to look for any objects and try to obtain much better data, high-resolution imaging in the infrared, in the optical, in the radio, in the audio, and figure out what these objects that the government is talking about are all about. And, eventually we should be able to figure it out.
Well, it's fine. I find it interesting because what you're essentially saying is you are going to be joining a group that is going to be looking for things that apparently the U.S. government has already seen, and you could save a lot of time and money by them just handing you this information.
Yes, in principle, but our data will be open to the public. This is a question of great public interest. I should say that as an astronomer, only over the past 5 years, we discovered the first 3 objects from outside the solar system. And the first 2 of them, a meteor which landed near Papua New Guinea and an object which passed near the Earth called Oumuamua, both of them were weird. They didn't look like the rocks we had seen before from the solar system, didn't look like a comet or an asteroid. And as a result of that, I decided to explore this further using the scientific method. And my hope is that in the coming year or 2, we'll have much better data. We can clear up this mystery and figure out what these objects are. And if they came from outside of this Earth and they are technological in origin, that would have a huge impact on the future of humanity.
I love that scientific term you just used. They were weird. There's a Fermi paradox out there, right? That's mathematically more likely than not that there are other lives out there, that there are extraterrestrials. So where are they? So my question to you is, first of all, do you believe in that paradox, that it has to be true that they're out there? And also, does that mean we're not alone? And where are they?
Well, you can sit at the sofa at home and say, I don't hear a knock on the door, therefore I don't have neighbors. That's the wrong approach. You should look through your windows. And you better use a telescope. And you may check your backyard if there are any objects that came from the street that indicate that you might have neighbors. So Fermi just asked the questions but didn't look. He didn't have the telescopes we have today, didn't have the cameras we have today, didn't have the evidence we have today. So it may well be that the answer to Fermi's paradox is they're here, you just didn't look.
Well, the man that is going to look, or at least one of the many of them, that's Professor Avi Loeb. Farm Boy, thank you for your time.